How should I accurately discuss my disappointment with Jake the Starchild, while still acknowledging that I did find it fairly enjoyable? Buckle your seatbelts, folks, as I'm about to unleash my musings on why I didn't have much of a problem with characters like, say, Orgelorg, while the blue alien calling himself Warren Ampersand left me with something to be desired. I doubt I'm alone in experiencing a tepid feeling of, was that it, at the end of Jake the Starchild? I believe the problem lies primarily with three intermingled factors: potential, scope, and focus. The vague disappointment was from the wasted potential of a plot point that has had a whole lot of build-up over multiple seasons, and the lack of adjacent thematic depth tied to the events of this episode. Jake was always a strange dog whose powers remained mysterious in nature from the start of the series. It was not until Margaret and Joshua investigations that we first learned the source of his powers, which opened up what felt like an immense number of questions. Those questions are mostly answered in Jake the Starchild, but the answers seem pretty basic, with the resulting events lacking long-reaching implications. Jake's alien progenitor is simply that, an alien named Warren Ampersand, who can impregnate other creatures it deems suitable to be hosts. We don't know what makes for a suitable host, and likely never will, and I'd bet even Warren wouldn't be able to answer that question in detail. He just sniffs out a potential match. Warren is yet another entry to the Awful Dad crew of Adventure Time, as his sole purpose for creating progeny is to fuel his desire for immortality. He drains the life essence of his children to extend his own life. Which is a fun concept. Like I said at the start, I did enjoy the episode, but that concept alone doesn't provide enough satisfaction with the long-running intrigue Warren has provided throughout the series up to this point. Jake the dog's struggle to reconcile who he is wasn't really about the blue shapeshifter Warren Ampersand. It was all about Jake's internal journey of self-discovery, self-realization, and self-actualization. But this journey of his was so heavily fleshed out in the earlier episodes, and thus nothing thematically heavy related to introspection was left to explore in Jake the Starchild. Abstract had Jake come to terms with the fact that he's been ignoring what makes him different from those around him.
There's some stuff about me that I've been ignoring for a long time. I'm afraid of that stuff. But it's part of who I am. As long as I know the shape of my soul, I'll be alright.
That episode was the bulk of Jake's journey. In the first investigation, Jake is heavily perturbed by witnessing his own birth out of the noggin of his father. Most of us probably don't want to see our own birth, but the added shock of being a biological aberration doesn't help. However, by the end of the first investigation, Jake has already come to terms with his birth.
I did see my own birth. Far out.
In Jake the Starchild, Jake is fine. He's just fine. He's fine with Warren and the new revelations about his birth. He stresses that Joshua is his only father.
Son? I ain't nobody's son but Joshua and Margaret.
But that was more emphasizing that he sees Joshua as his real parental figure, bloodlines be damned. After Warren has time to explain things, calling Jake's response lukewarm would probably be an exaggeration. Jake legit handles all the new information seemingly without a care.
Years ago, I left this beautiful planet and traveled to U to implant my destiny-rich, stretchy DNA into a compatible host.
That explains a lot, actually.
So this episode really doesn't contain any character development for Jake. He's mildly apprehensive of a predetermined destiny being dumped on him so abruptly, while somebody he just met keeps insisting he's the proudest pop. But Jake's weakness to peer pressure and feeling cool and important comes into play, and of course he goes along with everything. After getting conned, Jake turns the tables around and grifts Warren right back. And we're all familiar with Jake's history of crime, this should be no surprise. It was a neat detail that Joshua apparently taught Jake the trick though, meaning Joshua was the one who unintentionally set Jake on a path of occasional crime time. At the very end, Jake self-sacrifices for his pups, which was noble and cool, but again, we already knew he loves his pups very much and would sacrifice his life for them.
If you destroy me, you'll be stuck on that rock forever!
My pups are worth it.
I'm not trying to downplay anything Jake did, no. His selfless sacrifice was done without a shred of a second thought, and it highlights that while Jake may not be very involved in the lives of his pups, he still loves them immensely. All I'm doing is making the point that this is classic Jake through and through. He has not had any development this episode. This was not a life-changing experience for him. That part already happened in episodes prior. And thus, what's left to carry the episode is just the surface level events. Get it? Because the planet's surface is just Warren morphing? I'm sorry, I'll escort myself out. Anyway, the point is, what's responsible for making the episode fun and interesting would just be literally the plot-based events that happen, and that's okay in episodes where there's just a random out-of-the-blue adventure, but of course, this is hardly such an episode. This is the finale to Jake's origins plotline. And Warren's presence has been teased a lot throughout Jake's internal journey of self-discovery. He was there to represent multitudes of figurative issues Jake was stumbling across, but it did feel like his eventual appearance would result in a climax for Jake's character arc, or at least Warren would play a very large role in it, and it turns out he really doesn't. At all. Jake's internal journey was done by the time Warren showed up, so all these events in space feel like an afterthought as a result. Speaking of Warren's past appearances, I just want to mention the statue in abstract, because now we know what all those skulls at the base represent. They represent all the progeny Warren killed in order to extend his own life. That's a pretty neat little detail looking back. So, to reframe the discussion a little bit, let's get our comparative glasses on and make a comparison to another episode where a foreshadowed villain showed up yet was defeated by the episode's end. Let's compare Warren's episode to Orgalorg's episode. I think that seems pretty apt, especially since both Warren and Orgalorg are aliens with kinda comedic sounding voices. Seriously though, this line of discussion is going to elaborate on the scope and focus problems I mentioned at the start of this video. The Comet was an episode with an astounding breadth of scope. The Comet's core plot was about stopping Orgalorg, but it was about so much more than just that. It was also about Finn coming to terms with who his father is, and in doing so, also learning to understand himself better. It's also an episode that marks Finn's exit from his adolescent depression, as he chooses the meat reality he's put a lot of work into over transcending to a new state of being and starting anew. The Comet is honestly one of the most life-affirming episodes of any media I've ever seen, and yet it simultaneously also manages to explore the mindset of somebody who doesn't particularly value their own life, or at least what they've achieved with it. While Orgalorg drives the plot, it's actually a small part of this big episode, and the focus isn't even on Orgalorg. The focus is primarily on Finn and all the thematic depth that surrounds Finn at this point in his life. So, even if Orgalorg did end up seeming like a one-episode jobber that we'll never see again, his shenanigans weren't the focus. Thus, when I think about the Comet, I can appreciate Orgalorg's cool design and the idea of Finn slicing apart an elder god with his grass sword in space, while there's countless more ideas to discuss in relation to the episode as a whole, and that's what makes the Comet amazing and satisfying. In contrast, Jake the Starchild lacks that thematic depth. It's all about Warren. Warren is literally the one driving the entire plot, and all enjoyment will come from him and his direct interactions with Jake. So when all Warren has going for him is he's a bit of a weirdo who steals life from his progeny, and then he gets the tables turned back on him, well, it feels unsatisfying. The plotline was basic and by the numbers, really, which is something Adventure Time often manages to avoid when it comes to plotlines that unfold across multiple episodes. So those are my thoughts. If my explanation as to why I felt disappointed doesn't resonate with you, I hope it at least made sense and was somewhat elucidating. And with that giant chunk of criticism out of the way, let me quickly talk about a much smaller issue. The pacing could have been better. I thought it was a bit rushed. While the feeling of being rushed is in line with Warren trying to push Jake ahead before Jake can think too hard about anything, it still ended up feeling a little clunky. What's so weird is that the first minute, which may I remind you is nearly 10% of an episode, was a retread of what already happened at the end of the first investigation. There's some new dialogue squeezed in, but none of it was particularly necessary and could have been pushed back to after Warren jumps through the portal with Jake in hand. It reminded me a bit of Crossover, actually, which was another episode I thought was rushed that also spent the beginning portion retreading a past episode. Alright, let's shift gears and switch to some more casual commentary about Jake the Starchild. I want to first talk about Warren Ampersand a bit. Warren's stretching powers are a whole degree above Jake's, as Warren doesn't even have to remain connected to his stretchy creations like Jake does. This essentially allows not just transformation, but multiplication of the self on an enormous level. I mean, Warren had left part of his body behind when he went to go fetch Jake. That's ridiculous. If Warren and Jake had to fight, I honestly don't see Jake winning. Good thing he managed to steal his life essence back before it was too late and drain Warren of all that juice. The idea of Warren finding a small barren planet in space and enclosing it with his body to construct an alien civilization was really cool. I'm sure it reminded plenty of people, myself included, of Ego the Living Planet, except whereas Ego obviously is the entire planet that's able to change at will, Warren is instead more deceptive and disguises the planet's exterior by cloaking it with his own body. That's also what the title card to the episode is based on, with Jake making a planet with his bod as well, which is foreshadowing to the twist to come, though I'm sure many of us guessed it based on the fact that the planet's color scheme is only shades of blue. That was pretty suspicious. Even though Jake's origin story has been wrapped up, we remain in the dark about the alien Warren Ampersand. Was he a scientist because he was capable of creating a device that allowed for the transfer of life force? Are there others of his kind still out there, or was he the last one? Was he the only one? We get a glimpse into Warren's personality and his MO, but we don't learn anything about Warren's place in the world, and considering how he ends up thrown into a black hole, it seems like we never will. Personally, that's mostly fine for me and doesn't bother me that much, but considering how much Warren has been teased throughout the show leading up to this episode, it is a little bit of a bummer to learn absolutely nothing new besides him being a life-stealing jerk. Okie dokie, for the rest of this review, I'm just gonna make various comments about the episode in chronological order to round things up. I got a chuckle out of Warren saying Finn couldn't come with because he wouldn't be able to breathe in the home planet's atmosphere. The only time that ever seems to be mentioned in cartoons is when it's a flat-out lie. Once Jake is on the alien world, if it was any other character except Jake, I would be wondering why they're not asking Warren why he abandoned them until it was time for the prophecy. But since it is Jake, who's often absent-minded when it comes to those sorts of things, I'm fine with it. Besides, I'm sure Warren's answer would have been something along the lines of, to hide you from Ishkano until the fated day. It's a pretty generic answer, but it works, but I do just want to point out the fact that Jake didn't even feel like posing the question. My favorite part of the Jakeseum is the originator of the bacon pancake statue. Why Warren made Jake stand atop his bacon pancakes, that I don't know. Jake's goopy puddle form is amazing. I absolutely loved it. You know what? I just got an idea to make a top 10 Jake transformations video after Adventure Time is over. I better write that idea down. Outside the private room, there's a picture with fetal Jake that has the words paternity and eternity. That's a fun little allusion to Warren's plan, although at this point we're literally seconds away from seeing it in action. Which, that whole scene was a little silly to me. It's a small planet, but Warren could reside on any other part of it when doing his little mirror dance routine. And yet he chooses to be adjacent to Jake's dwelling, allowing Jake to witness the weirdness firsthand. It obviously doesn't change much, of course, since Jake still does part 2 of the plan later. It just lets the audience know what's going on ahead of time. But even that felt unnecessary. We could have just went to the next day and seen that Warren looks oddly younger then, which would allow more time to even out the pacing. But hey, at least the music during this scene was really good. It was only when we first saw old withered Jake that I had a mini realization of why Jake has this deeply entrenched fear of becoming old in the first place. It's because that's what his bio-daddy wanted to do to him from the moment of conception. He was concepting Jake for the sole purpose of stealing his life and making him old and decrepit. I think that's a neat little follow-up on Jake's fear, and I just wish there was more, cool little callbacks like that in this episode. As for the low-key affection thing, it seemed a bit too spontaneous and convenient in its presentation. Warren not feeling the guilt until after seeing Jake decrepit and aged makes sense, but I wish they front-loaded more on Warren thinking Jake was cool beforehand. For example, at the Jakeseum, they could have had Warren enthusiastically talking about his favorite adventures that Jake had that Warren now depicts. Having Warren consider his son cool from the very get-go, instead of just saying, "You're cooler than my other kids were," after the fact, would have really helped bring the plot together more in my opinion. So it kinda seemed like Warren was not aware that Jake had become a dad based on the dialogue.
5 stretchy pops.
Uh-oh.
You saved me after all!
I mean, that's not that big of a deal. It can easily be explained by the fact that Warren only occasionally checks up on Jake, and he didn't do it at a time that happened to coincide with Jake being around the pups. But the reason I bring it up is because I want to discuss the implications of it. Apparently, Warren never once considered that any of the progeny he leaves behind might have their own children that he could continue stealing the life force from down the line. That's what's kind of weird to me. Like, if you're gonna steal your child's life essence, wouldn't you also want to make absolutely sure that your child doesn't have extra children? Because that would make your job a lot easier if they did. Although, on that topic of stretchy pups, Kim Kil-won did stretch while in super pup formation, and Jake Jr. stretches her hair. However, I don't recall the other pups ever stretching, and Kim Kil-won hasn't ever done it as an adult. I'm sure they're all capable of stretching, but I bring this up because I'm just imagining Warren Ampersand trying to fool the pups into stretching for him, but failing miserably. Well, except for TV. TV would totally get his stretch essence sucked out, because TV is not the brightest pup. Warren Ampersand in general wasn't interesting enough for me as a character. I think I've already made that clear. He's the standard sort of stupid cartoon villain whose own ploy ends up being used against him due to his cockiness and carelessness. All that being said though, I can't help but appreciate him a little, simply because his final words were amazing.
I see now. This fleshy form has taken me as far as it can. I'm going 4D, baby.
Warren's characterization being on the flat side is part of the problem, though, with the episode. Like I said, the episode was fun, and I did enjoy my time watching it, but the combination of Warren being sort of a flub, Jake not changing as a character whatsoever, and there being a lack of interesting themes to explore, made the experience feel like a letdown. Especially since we were looking forward to this plot point finally happening oh so much. I can't help but feel that it was squandered potential, and by the end of this batch of episodes, I had far more interest in how Finn and Jermaine try to get Jake back, rather than in Jake's confrontation with his father. The Temple of Mars review will be coming out next. See ya then.